when I was young, 20 seemed old. When I was 20, 30 was over the hill. Anything beyond 30 was unthinkable, so I got on with living, and suddenly I was 40. No more children, probably. Halfway to 80, but at least my hair was still dark. Then, sometime between 40 and 50, grey hairs began to sneak in. I didn't dye my hair. I've always preferred reality to artifice. I hate pretend buttons. And then one day I was 50. That's halfway to dead. And I began to realise that everyone younger than 50 regarded me as old, or at least not young. Then my mum died. I was now on the front line. I think it was in my 60s that I began to notice that policemen and doctors and other important people were all so young. But at least I could still walk normally, even if I wouldn't be climbing any more mountains. And 70 was way off. But suddenly I was 70, and there was no more escaping the fact that I was old. 70 years and 10, but at least not sans too much. 70-year-olds nowadays are a bit better off than in Shakespeare's time. Okay, some teeth have had to be replaced. One knee has been replaced, the other leg isn't perfect. Cataracts have been removed twice. Blood pressure needs controlling with meds. Getting a bit deaf, my daughter tells me, and sometimes this is a worry. I find myself mixing things up. But I'm still young inside. In fact, the older my body gets, the more I feel like a child again. But the next big birthday is a bit scary. When I was a kid, people didn't live much past 80. 80th birthday parties. 80th birthday parties back then were full of really old people who didn't seem to be intent on writing novels or having a one-person exhibition. They seemed happy enough to just sit and knit and smile. But who knows, perhaps all sorts of plans were buzzing around inside. I know I still have heaps of things I want to do. Maybe 90 is the new 80. I'd better stop wasting my time on Netflix and get on with it.
Next life, I want to live my life backwards. You start out dead and get that out of the way. Then you wake up in an old people's home feeling better every day. You get kicked out for being too healthy. Then you find yourself living happily alone, apart from a chihuahua, in a very pleasant little villa. Then you start work and get a lovely bunch of flowers and a ticket to the opera on your first day. One day a mature gentleman appears who seems to know you pretty well. You work for 20 years alongside your man, and then you enjoy your children's graduations. You work next 20 years part-time while you unlearn how to be a good parent, juggling being an unpaid domestic with an unpaid taxi driver. A little later, you're in the maternity ward, giving birth to your first gorgeous baby. After that, you spend a couple of very interesting years trying to, wondering which of the various potential partners is the father of your children. And then you find yourself at uni, and then at high school, and then you're a kid, and life is nothing but play. You have no responsibilities. You become a baby until you're born. And then you spend your last 9 months floating in luxurious spa-like conditions with central heating and room service on tap, larger quarters every day, and then voila, you end up as an orgasm.
Well, yes, that would certainly deal with the agonies of old age.
What do you think of old age?
Growing old is like being increasingly penalised for a crime you haven't committed.
Some people are old when they're 18, and some are still young when they're 90.
One of the many great joys of old age is giving things up.
I know a woman who was given a book called Life Begins at 60. I am 74, she said, and I'm still waiting.
In youth, the days are short and the years are long. In old age, the years are short and the days are long.
40 is the old age of youth, 50 the youth of old age.
Rarely do we see women over a certain age being held up as desirable or admirable or even being held up at all. Meanwhile, silver-haired men abound in movies, on TV, in seats of power.
Nothing makes a woman look so old as trying desperately hard to look young.
Old age is like getting on a plane in a storm. Once you're on board, there's absolutely nothing you can do.
Old age isn't so bad. When do you consider the alternative?
Did you know there's a word for the fear of growing old? Gerascophobia or gerontophobia. And the fear of death is thanatophobia.
I fear I am growing old.
My chin is turning to jelly old.
I sometimes forget things I'm told.
Embarrassing senior moments can make life difficult.
I forget where I put my glasses, and I mix up sugar and salt. Gerasco, I'm growing older. Toronto, August coming near.
Bernardo, that's what's in store for us.
No young desire to fear.
My hearing is definitely slipping.
I need achieved by worry. One day at a time is quite enough. I can really only do one big thing a day. A day with the grandkids quite tough. If we were born in the 40s, we've really had a pretty good run. Let's not let Rascophobia win the day. It's time now to just sit in the sun.
Do you get a shock when you look in the mirror?
Yes, I know what you mean. Sometimes I wonder who the old lady is who seems to be living in my house.
I don't like looking at this weird version of myself, but I have to use the mirror a bit. There are these annoying little hairs keep appearing on my face.
You're lucky you don't have as many wrinkles as I do. At least neither of us is putting on weight.
I still get puffed just getting up the stairs. And I'm shrinking. I just found out recently. Soon I'll be a genuine little old lady.
At least our hair isn't going to fall out.
We hope.
Do you remember when we were kids how old ladies used to dye their hair pink or pale blue?
Nowadays it's the kids who change their hair colour.
And there were special clothes for old ladies, twin sets and pearls, and, of course, skirts of a respectable length, and stockings and sensible shoes. At least nowadays we can wear whatever we feel like. Trousers are so much more comfortable than skirts and stockings. But I certainly approve of sensible shoes. My Berkeys are the best.
Walking's not much fun for me anymore. I should really use my walker, but it makes me look so old.
Do old men worry so much about how they look as old ladies do you think?
I've known of men wearing wigs and getting implants to avoid baldness.
Oh, thank you.
You know Oliver Sacks?
You mean the mistaking your wife for a hat man?
Yes, that's the one. Now, Oliver Sacks writes about his father. My father, who lived to 94, often said that the 80s had been one of the most enjoyable decades of his life. He felt not a shrinking, but an enlargement of mental life and perspective. He did not think of old age as an ever grimmer time that one must somehow endure and make the best of, but a time of leisure and freedom, freed from the factitious urgencies of earlier days, free to explore whatever he wished and to bind the thoughts and feelings of his life together.
That's all very well for a person in their 80s who's pretty healthy, with no money or accommodation worries, and someone to love.
Oh, yes, that's true. I guess Mr. Sacks Sr. must have had an okay life to write like that.
Our society might give 80-year-old men their due, but rarely 80-year-old women. I'm getting on, you know. But in our culture, I have never been acknowledged as a holder of wisdom. But a few years ago, I was privileged to sit in a circle of elders at an Aboriginal women's retreat, and I was asked to share wisdom from my life. I wept.
Oh.
I am the old woman who is the bearer of life of loss and of sudden changes. I am she who grieves, who dreams, who soothes. I am the heart, life and death connected. I am the old woman, always reconfiguring patterns in the sand, remembering over and over again.
Here's to the wisdom and love of grandmothers and all women elders. The earth and the universe need us.
Sometimes woken in the silence of the night with the knowledge that life is not permanent. It is hard to imagine that one day we will no longer exist, perhaps only in our children's and grandchildren's hearts. When daylight wakes me, I step out of bed into the light, into the bustling music of birds calling, the warmth of the sun, my beloved handing me a hot cup of tea, a grandchild wanting to use my iPad, and here we are, once again. That knowledge has been suppressed. It is interesting to thinking about the moment of death, the point when we actually cease to live. While at one level this can represent a moment to be feared or delayed as long as possible, it can also be seen as a moment of fulfillment or arrival.
Costco is selling coffins and urns. Don't stress. Death's affordable. That brings relief for families hard-pressed to find the cash when all costs are finally revealed. I've checked the range, and I think I might accept in readiness for when the Reaper creeps behind me suddenly and in a flash he makes a grab. Too late, when fate is sealed. Come and join me in a spending fest on Monday morning, heading the stampede, plastic ready in our fists. Maybe buying in bulk will screw a better deal. For boxes, we could store our blankets in, and canisters for holding vitamins.
Oh. Thanks for telling me. Maybe I'll rush off and buy some. But I hope they're eco-friendly. I really want a plywood or a cardboard coffin. When is the Costco open? Oh. Lately I think I've copped what the French call a coup de vieux, a blow of oldness. I've got arthritis in this hand, my right knee gives me bad twinges, and my left foot sometimes aches and stabs all day.
How old are you?
77. I know that's not very old these days, but I'm beginning to feel old, and I'm worried about Alzheimer's. I'm only a few years off the age when my aunt was when it hit her.
You are about to leave the house. You have a letter to post. You forgot it yesterday and it must be done today. You put it on the hall table where you can see it. But you know you have to check one more time that the back door is locked and that the burners on the stove are turned off. But you know too that after doing these tasks you may well leave without picking up the letter. So, you set the letter slant on the hall table, for as soon as you see it slant on the hall table, you will have to straighten it so that its edges are parallel to the edges of the table. And as soon as you touch it, to set it straight, you will remember that you have to post it. So then, you put it in your bag, hoping that you will remember to post it. NB, you do not go back and check the back door and the burners again. Things haven't got that bad yet.
No one tells you that getting old isn't fun.
It's a time of loss.
If we had a professional identity, it tends to slip away.
Our income probably decreases.
Friends and families die or move away, literally or metaphorically.
Then, if we're in a largish family home, holding a history of a lifetime, it becomes too big to maintain.
Gardens, formerly a source of joy, become a challenge.
Our bodies deteriorate. We lose our health.
Maybe our memories.
And maybe our independence, especially if we're told we should stop driving.
Loss or gain? Each time we detach ourselves from something we value, we have a reason to rejoice. Are we not slowly making our way towards the destiny that was always ours? Life is not downhill. We are slowly climbing the mountain. Aging is a process of detachment, progress towards transcendence.
70 years and 10. As good a spot as any to stop, turn, peer down the long avenues of our lives.
I have begun to say no. A list of things that I am not going to do is growing, trailing behind me like French knitting. You don't need to know what those things are, just that by deciding not to do them is my freedom. Maybe theirs too. I wean them, tenderly kiss them goodbye, close the door behind them, and lean against it for a moment, resting. Soon, other things will come that can't be sent away. Old age, illness, that other one. They will wing me with swan song shots. Their marksmanship is legendary. But I have things, such things to do before then. Things of colour and noise,
shining, singing things. Things born in warmer climates, speaking languages new to me. Things I haven't even invented yet.
Do you have a table full of all sorts of medications you have been told you should take daily? Tablets, creams, eye drops?
Oh, absolutely. When I travel nowadays, it's ridiculous how many extra bits and pieces I have to take with me. Remember when we were 20? We travelled round the world with nothing but one backpack. But now, besides all those tablets and creams and eye drops you mentioned, I also need to take my blood pressure monitor, a special cushion for my bad back, and heat packs, knee supports, and all my different pairs of glasses, as well as walking sticks, just in case. At least travellers nowadays have bags with wheels.
Mr. Shakespeare had quite a bit to say about getting old.
All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. At first, the infant, mewling and puking.
Oh, he was probably only thinking about boys. But girl infants mewl and puke just as much as baby boys, I reckon.
And then the whining schoolboy.
Certainly girls have also been known to whine and to crawl like a snail unwillingly to school.
And then the lover sighing like furnace.
Oh, probably we all go through a sighing period looking for someone to love.
Then a soldier, sudden and quick in quarrel.
Maybe this is like our first solid job, when we feel competent and in charge of our lives. Perhaps we get bossy, or it could be the married woman arguing with her spouse.
And then the justice, full of wise saws.
Maybe this is us in our final decade or so. At work, definitely no longer young, respected, we hope.
Then the slippered pantaloon with childish treble.
Maybe this is us now, or as we could well be in a few years, often wearing slippers, certainly looking and feeling elderly, not exactly with a childish treble, but certainly our voices change.
Last scene of all is second childishness and mere oblivion, sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything.
Well, at least here in Australia we can get help with teeth, sight, hearing, etc. But I suppose childishness and oblivion are still on the cards for any of us of either sex.
Well, I read in an article in a newspaper yesterday about a woman of 90 in Melbourne who's just been awarded her PhD. No childishness or oblivion there.
Wow. But, I mean, actually, heaps of writers, musicians and artists are still producing excellent work in their 70s and 80s and even 90s.
What about scientists?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Modern medicine has changed our attitude to old age and death. They've worked out how to prolong the average lifespan beyond anything that would have been considered a century ago. Maybe, in principle, it could be prolonged forever.
But who would really want immortality? Probably the things we most treasure about life would not be there for us. And besides, by what right do we clutter up the planet with our permanent presence, leaving no room for future generations?
And there's another moral issue. Perhaps it is not always the right thing to keep a person alive, if there is no quality of life possible for that person.
Yes, that's what euthanasia advocates say.
Or voluntary assisted dying.
I would certainly not want to be kept alive if my mind had gone. If there really was no possibility of a life worth living, then I would hope that my little life would be rounded with a sleep.
Knowest 'tis common, all that lives must die, passing through nature to eternity. Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. The soul that rises with us, our life's star, hath had elsewhere its setting, and cometh from afar. Not in entire forgetfulness and not in utter nakedness, but trailing clouds of glory do we come from God, who is our home.
I'm so sorry, love. I knew your mum wasn't well, but I didn't understand. I didn't know.
Nor did I. My dad died years ago. He had a really rare disease which they couldn't work out a cure for. Mum nursed him at home right up to the end. She was wonderful. It must have been so hard for her. I was in my 20s at the time, living independently, and I know I didn't really understand what Mum was going through. It wasn't until I read her poem about Dad that I was able to see her objectively as a woman who had loved and lost.
I didn't know your mum was a poet.
How many more springs you shed shall I see? The peach tree with grace was crowned, arrayed in tender flowers, at whose birth the sun was midwife. All the earth about us pulsed with the tide of brimming life, like a knife for your words. They abide in my heart with that day in spring. Now autumn's golden claret hold the stage, and leaf is falling on frosted leaf through the quiet air of this place. When the boughs are bare of riches against the sky, the lovely trees like filigrees enclose this acre where you lie.
I ordered a coffin this morning, cardboard.
Did you talk to your mum about what sort of funeral she'd like?
No. By the time I realised we were looking at the end of her life, she could barely talk. I hope I and the others can work out between us what sort of words and what sort of music she would have liked. She wasn't a churchgoer, really. My sister is a sort of Buddhist. She would probably want us to go down that path.
This body is not me. I am not caught in this body. I am life without boundaries. I have never been born and I have never died. Over there, the wide ocean and the sky with many galaxies, all manifest from the basis of consciousness. Since beginningless time, I have always been free. Birth and death are only a door through which we go in and out. Birth and death are only a game of hide and seek. So smile to me and take my hand and wave goodbye. Tomorrow we shall meet again, or even before. We shall always be meeting again at the true source. always meeting again on the myriad paths of life.
I like that, but I don't think Mum would have coped with the notion of reincarnation. Probably we'll just have to find words which are vaguely Christian but not too dogmatic.
In my father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you.
Do you personally believe in an afterlife?
I would like to. I'm not sure. It would be so good to see Mum and Dad again. But Dad hated organised religion, and Mum only went at Christmas if we were singing, and that isn't much of a basis for expecting God to make it easy for you.
Did you ever read the Narnia novels?
Maybe, some of them.
Oh, there's a wonderful bit in the last one, the last battle, when the children have all died and they find themselves in a very familiar place, a known landscape, but somehow refreshed. And they find there a person they didn't expect to find. He wasn't on their side of the battle. But the god figure, Aslan the lion, tells them that the Talamine soldier has known him, Aslan, all his life. He just called him by a different name, and he is welcome there.
Death is the beginning of chapter 1 of the great story, which no one on earth has read, which goes on forever, in which every chapter is better than the one before.
C.S. Lewis is up there, and there are lots of wonderful hymns and things which are uplifting and comforting without throwing any sort of extremism at you. I'm happy to help you choose if you like.
Oh, thank you.
Do you think your mum would have preferred burial or cremation?
Burial, I think. One of my friends told me that in her family they do cremation and scatter the person's ashes onto their favourite stretch of water. Her daughter, who died from cancer at 40, they scattered into the waves of her favourite beach. Her first husband into the nearest river, which goes to the sea. Her father near the bridge where he loved to fish. Her mother in the bay where she lived on an island. My friend and her son rowed out from the wharf with a boat full of flowers her mother had grown and scattered the flowers with the ashes. Her second husband died in the middle of Melbourne's terrible COVID lockdown, so she wasn't permitted to hug him. She could only look at him through the window, and he, with dementia, didn't understand. No funeral service was possible, and last time I spoke with her, his ashes were still waiting to be taken down to his favourite beach. But when I was young, cremation wasn't at all the way most families wanted to go, and I think Mum would prefer burial. We'll all paint on her coffin and make it beautiful. In the hospice, on the day she died, the volunteers there were wonderful. They asked us if she liked gum blossoms, and when we said yes, she did, they brought in heaps of beautiful flowering branches and laid them all around her on the bed. I think she would enjoy a colourful send-off, not a drab, boring sort of event. I saw a poem the other day which describes the sort of feeling I hope we can create.
Please don't wear black. Don't sing anything dreich. Let the music be brilliant. Let it coruscate, crackle upward like fireworks. Let there be champagne as good as you can buy and lots of it. Let there be flowers, not lilies, chrysanthemums, white roses, baby's breath, or any of those dreary death blooms. Get hold of tulips, irises, brazening their colours like flags, bloody great swags of hydrangea, agapanthus, nerine. In Mexico they have the right idea. Hot orange marigolds spread thick across the church floor like butter at funerals and on the Day of the Dead. Let everyone wear forget-me-not and time. Say anything you like about me, I'll not be there. I shall have other worlds to explore, shall have joined the consciousness unimaginably large, which I'll be learning step by step.
Nothing of death until it came screaming at me with the death of my infant son, unforeseen, unexpected, and unexplained. I was 36. Now I am 75 and death is all around. Best friends have died too young. A pandemic has been killing thousands, and World War III is on the doorstep. I want to live much longer. I have grandchildren to love and much more to do and live for. But I have received a diagnosis.
How are you today?
Oh, not too bad. Oh, I only have a few more months now, they reckon. Each favourite thing I now try to do or look at, I find myself wondering if it's the last thing I'll do it.
What's the worst thing at the moment?
Oh, probably my legs. They're so weak. I can hardly get out of my chair.
I know what that feels like.
You know, we've hired this Smoky Dawson armchair, and when you need to get up, you press the right buttons and it goes up very slowly, very gently, until you can get out. Or you should be able to. I'm terrified it'll just dump me on the floor or shoot me into the television. And you know the other problem, you know, the one when you need to rush to the loo. Yes, when I need to go ASAP, I panic and press all the wrong buttons.
What are you doing most days? Reading, writing?
Oh, I wish I knew the best thing to do. There's nothing I really want to do. No one's written a manual on what to do when you'll be dead in 3 months. Well, I tried to plan my funeral. I saw a video of an English woman she was in her last few months, and she'd made tapes of advice and love for her daughter, and she planned her funeral meticulously. She'd chosen the venue for the wake, she'd planned the music, she'd even organised the food. Sadly, she wasn't going to be there to enjoy it. Oh, but at least I can choose the photos of me that they'll have in the slideshow.
It's so difficult to talk about death.
Death is not extinguishing the light, it is only putting out the lamp, because the dawn has come.
Death is no more than passing from one room into another. But there's a difference for me, you know. For in that other room, I'll be able to see.
To die will be an awfully big adventure. The day that we fear is our last is but the birthday of eternity. Birth is a pilgrimage. Death, a return home.
When you were born, you cried, and the world rejoiced. Live your life so that when you die, the world cries and you rejoice.
When my mother died, one of her honey cakes remained in the freezer. I couldn't bear to see it vanish, so it waited, pardoned, in its ice cave behind the metal trays for 2 more years. On my 41st birthday, I chipped it out, a rectangular resurrection, hefted the dead weight in my palm. Before it thawed, I sawed with serrated knife the thinnest of slices. Jewish Eucharist. I yearned to recall life, not death, the still body in her pink nightgown on the bed, how I lay in the shallow cradle of the scattered sheets after they'd taken it away, inhaling her scent one last time. I close my eyes, savour a wafer of sacred cake on my tongue, try to taste my mother, to discern the message she baked in these loaves when she was too ill to eat them. I love you. It will end. Leave something of sweetness and substance in the mouth of the world.
It seems that quite a lot of people view the end of life as a gentle slipping back into matter, into the earth, into the basic stuff of the universe.
we can think of our leaving this life is to feel that we will live on in the memories and hearts of people to whom we were meaningful. I saw a film online, a video made by a family who had lost their mum but hadn't come together to grieve. So they set out to walk for months with backpacks, camping through the countryside of England, through the wild places that they had visited as a family. And as they walked, they talked and bonded. And this poem meant a huge amount to them.
First of us to die, let grief not blacken long your sky. Be bold yet modest in your grieving. There is a change, but not a leaving. For just as death is part of life, the dead live on forever in the living. And all the gathered riches of our journey, the moment shared, the mysteries explored, the steady layering of intimacy stored, the things that made us laugh or weep or sing, the joy of sunlit snow or first unfurling of the spring, the wordless language of look and touch, the knowing, each giving and each taking. These are not flowers that fade, nor trees that fall and crumble, nor are they stone, for even stone cannot the wind and rain withstand, and mighty mountain peaks in time reduced to sand. What we were, we are. What we had, we have. A conjoined past, imperishably present. So when you walk the wood where once we walked together, and scan in vain the dappled bank beside you for my shadow, or pause where we always did, upon the hill to gaze across the land, and spotting something, reach by habit for my hand, and finding none, feel sorrow start to swell. Be still, close your eyes, breathe. Listen for my footfall in your heart. I am not gone, but merely walk within you.
Has either of you ever had a near-death experience?
Not myself. But quite a few friends have told me that they have felt a very real presence of the person who has just died. Or, in some cases, just before a meaningful person who was not close by died, they were contacted and knew that death was imminent.
One of my friends had a beautiful experience of that sort. She herself had always been embarrassed by her own singing. Both her daughters sang really well in choirs and, but she felt because she couldn't do what they could do, she just didn't sing much. Her husband had never learned music, but he had an intrinsic good pitch. And he knew a lot of songs from his native Macedonia. Well, he died, her husband. She had loved him very much, especially as he'd been blinded and she'd had to care for him. Well, he was gone. His body was gone, but she felt his presence very strongly, and she felt him asking her to sing. So, with great trepidation, she summoned up a short, silly children's song, and she sang it out loud to the very real presence of her beloved husband. And then she felt him leave.
Quite a lot of people who have nearly died themselves but have come back report a very peaceful feeling and a beautiful light toward which they feel drawn. But as it is not time for them to leave, they reluctantly come back to their body.
As far as I know, all the religions of the world believe that there is more in heaven and earth, Horatio, that is dreamt of. They all say that there is something, not nothing, at the end of life. Different sorts of somethings. I know that the medieval Christian church made much of heaven and hell as reward and punishment, and I think Judaism supports a similar idea. And that this sort of picture has put the many people off the whole idea of an afterlife. But many current theologians support the view of a universal salvation.
William Blake said, "I am going to that country which I have all my life wished to see."
Well, Rudolf Steiner created a synthesis between Eastern and Western thinking about the afterlife. He brings reincarnation back, which is thought to have been banned from Orthodox Christianity in the 4th century. He also brings karma, a Buddhist and Hindu doctrine, into the mix, and somehow he hangs on to the essence of Christianity. All things alive throughout the universe live but in bringing forth within them the seed of a new life. So too the soul of man is given up to aging and to death, only that deathless he may ripen to ever newly resurrected life.
The book of Revelations opens up an amazing vista of what we could expect.
And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, and I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, "Behold, God shall wipe away all tears from your eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away."
And he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God. On either side of the river was the tree of life, which bare 12 manner of fruits, and yieldeth her fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations.
Shakespeare gives Hamlet to say, "The dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveller returns, puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of."
It's definitely an undiscovered country.
Perhaps in the face of all this mystery, what we should do is follow the words of the famous English anchoress, Julian of Norwich. All shall be well, all shall be well, and all manner of thing shall be well.